Mike,
Hey, Sri
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
How are you?
I'm good. Let me just check my audio here. Say something now.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, perfect. Excuse me. So I had a pretty good day, actually.
Oh, good.
I'm reading Lord Chaitanya's Conquering the Digvijay. Digvijay means a dude that can conquer all directions. He was conquering everyone all over India. And he learned that Navadvip was like the center of all learning back then, 500 years ago. All the scholars used to just hang out in the bank of the Ganges and read the scripture and debate with each other. And Nimai Pandit, he was enjoying in his covered way he's just enjoying being a scholar. Nobody could defeat him. Nobody. And this Digvijay thought he could defeat him, and his disciples, his fellow students, actually, because he's just a kid, he's like 18 years old, and his students said, "Hey, Digvijay is coming," and Mahaprabhu Nimai at that time said, "Krishna doesn't tolerate, people that are really puffed up, and proud of their knowledge." And so, he showed up in the bank of the Ganges, and Lord Chaitanya, he didn't want to humiliate him because he's so kind, even to like people that are completely puffed up. He removes their pride without humiliating them. So he decided to, talk to him in a secluded place. But first he was on the bank of the Ganges, and it was a beautiful moonlit night, and the Ganges was like really beautiful. And Lord Chaitanya was sitting there and surrounded by his students, and Digvijay came up, and Lord Chaitanya just, started asking him very, he said, you're such a wonderful scholar. Maybe you can describe the glories of the Ganges. And so he rattled off, right at the top of his head, like, what do you call that when you're rapping? It's like free fall,
freestyling, riffing.
Freestyle riff, yeah. So he did that for 3 hours. Beautiful, perfect, because he was empowered by the goddess Saraswati. And so he was actually the servant of Lord Chaitanya, of the Supreme Narayan, and so Gaura Narayan. So anyway, he said, "Oh, so it's such beautiful explanation. What beautiful recitation. All the letters and everything, and the metaphors were perfect. But I'd like you to explain it, And so he picked out one verse and he tried to explain it, and Lord Chaitanya just picked it apart from the beginning, middle, and end, and he couldn't answer. All his knowledge was gone. He was thinking to himself, where'd my knowledge go? And so he completely defeated him. And just when all the other students were about to laugh, Lord Chaitanya just like, Nimai just shut him up, don't laugh at him, because otherwise he'd be embarrassed, he would die, actually, that kind of person who's got that kind of prestige. He was like arrived on elephants and horses and palanquins and everything. So, he the next morning, that night, he had a dream that goddess Saraswati, he was chanting, and he fell asleep chanting the mantras for the goddess of learning. And she appeared to him in a dream. He said, "This is none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the controller of all the universes. And you should go there immediately and surrender to him." And so he did. And the next morning, really early in the morning, and Lord Chaitanya said, "What are you doing here this morning? It's so early, And he disclosed to him, you can't be any other than the Supreme Lord. Saraswati told me this." And so, so all this happened, and Lord Chaitanya blessed him and he embraced him, and then he gave up all his entourage and all the chariots and elephants to appropriate persons, and he became really humbler than a blade of grass, and his prestige wasn't defeated, and Nimai became really famous. But still, even after that, nobody knew he was the Supreme Lord because of the external energy. Nobody knew who he was. even after, he so many times he indicated that he was the supreme, but nobody knew it. Even the Vaishnavas didn't know it. So it's ecstatic pastime. Bhaktisiddhanta is such an expert in describing these pastimes. I mean, I'm reading. I'm on like the 13th chapter right now, the Adi Kanda. That's the first part of his pastimes. His childhood pastime. But that's over 1,200 pages, and it's not like book pages. It's like single space, small font, page, like 8.5 by 11. So that's just 1/3 of the book. It took me like 4.5 hours to read one chapter the other day. This was a 2-hour chapter, but it's just really, really fun to read, because all you got to do is surrender, and Krishna, Bhaktisiddhanta just like talks right through you. And it makes it so clear what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to act, how you're supposed to say the Sanskrit or Bengali words. Bengali words this is exactly the same as the Chaitanya Charitamrita. They're all in couplets. They're rhyming couplets. Anyway, let's start with this again.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue with this, Prabhupada's books, a 1972 version, because, before I was like, because a lot of the gurus like, Vaisheshika and all these guys are like representatives of the BBT. But when I saw that, my favorite quote from Prabhupada, it pissed me off. And now I'm like, before I was like a company man, now I'm a freaking rebel. I'm never going to sell any of the BBT version. I'm going to only sell the pre-1972 versions because it just pisses me off. Anyway, I don't want to make a big deal about that because that could be controversial. I don't like to get in arguments. Anyway, why don't you go ahead with text 16 here?
Sure. Chatur Vida Bhajante Mam.
Okay, I am recording this.
Yeah.
I you see the record button there? Is it on?
Yeah, up in the top left of my screen, it says recording.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
Text 16. Chatur Vida Bhajante Mam Jana Sukritino Arjuna Arto Jijnasur Tharthi Jnani Cha Bharat Tar Shaba. Synonyms. Chatur Vida, 4 kinds of. Bhajante, render services. Mam, unto me. Jana, persons. Sukritina, those who are pious. Arjuna, O Arjuna. Artha, the distressed. Jijnasu, the inquisitive. Artha Arthi, one who desires material gain. Jnani, one who knows things as they are. Cha, also. Bharatar Shaba, O great one among the descendants of Bharat. Translation. O best among the Bharatas, Arjuna, 4 kinds of pious men render devotional service unto me: the distressed, the desirer of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the absolute.
Read the first paragraph up to Sanskrit.
Okay. Purport. Unlike the miscreants, these are adherents of the regulative principles of the scriptures, and they are called Sukritina, or those who obey the rules and regulations of scriptures, the moral and social laws, and are more or less devoted to the Supreme Lord. Out of these, there are 4 classes of men: those who are sometimes distressed, those who are in need of money, those who are sometimes inquisitive, and those who are sometimes searching after knowledge of the absolute truth. These persons come to the Supreme Lord for devotional service under different conditions. These are not pure devotees because they have some aspiration to fulfill in exchange for devotional service. Pure devotional service is without aspiration and without desire for material profit. The Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu defines pure devotion thus.
Anya bilashita sunyam gana karmadi anavritam anukulyena krishna nusyulam bhaktirutama. One should render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord Krishna favorably and without desire for material profit or gain through fruitive activities or philosophical speculation. That is called pure devotional service, end quote. When these 4 kinds of persons come to the Supreme Lord for devotional service and are completely purified by the association of pure devotee, they also become pure devotees. As far as the miscreants are concerned, for them, devotional service is very difficult because their lives are selfish, irregular, and without spiritual goals. But even some of them, by chance, when they come in contact with a pure devotee, also become pure devotees. You can read the last paragraph.
Those who are always busy with fruitive activities come to the Lord in material distress, and at that time associate with pure devotees and become, in their distress, devotees of the Lord. Those who are simply frustrated also come sometimes to associate with the pure devotees and become inquisitive to know about God. Similarly, when the dry philosophers are frustrated in every field of knowledge, they sometimes want to learn of God, and they come to the Supreme Lord to render devotional service, and thus transcend knowledge of the impersonal Brahman and the localized Paramatma, and come to the personal conception of Godhead by the grace of the Supreme Lord or his pure devotee. On the whole, when the distressed, the inquisitive, the seekers of knowledge, and those who are in need of money are free from all material desires, and when they fully understand that material remuneration has nothing to do with spiritual improvement, they become pure devotees. As long as such a purified stage is not attained, devotees in transcendental service to the Lord are tainted with fruitive activities, and they search after mundane knowledge, etc. So one has to transcend all this before one can come to the stage of pure devotional service.
Text 17. Tesham gyani nitya yukta eka bhaktir vishishyate priyo hi janino yatyartam aham sacha mama priya. Synonyms. Out of them, Tesham, out of them, Gyani, one in full knowledge, Nitya Yukta, always engaged, Eka, only one, Bhakti, devotional service, Vishishyate, especially, Priya, very dear. He, certainly, Jnanina, person in knowledge, Atyartam, highly, Aham, I am, Sahicha, also, Mama, mine, Priya, dear. Translation of these, the wise one who is in full knowledge and union with me through pure devotional service is the best, for I am very dear to him and he's very dear to me. Purport: free from all contaminations of material desires, the distressed, the inquisitive, the penniless, and the seeker after supreme knowledge can all become pure devotees. But out of them, he who is in knowledge of the absolute truth and free from all material desires becomes a really pure devotee of the Lord. And of the four orders, the devotee who is in full knowledge and at the same time engaged in devotional service, the Lord says, is the best. By searching after knowledge, one realizes that his self is different from his material body. And when further advanced, he comes to the knowledge of impersonal Brahmana and Paramatma. When one is fully purified, he realizes that his constitutional position is to be an eternal servant of God. So by association with pure devotees, the distressed, the inquisitive, the seeker after material amelioration, and the man in knowledge, them all become themselves pure. But in the preparatory stage, the man who is in full knowledge of the Supreme Lord and is at the same time executing devotional service is very dear to the Lord. He who is situated in pure knowledge of the transcendence of the Supreme Personality of God is also protected in devotional service, that material contaminations cannot touch him. So that's why, Krishna is so kind. Even though you have ulterior motives, Krishna will purify you and it doesn't matter. Krishna will accept you either way and, take away all your anarthas and your sideline desires and make you desire him only. That's just the kindness of Krishna. Go ahead.
Sure. Text 18. Udara sarva evayite jnani tvi atmaiva me matam astita sahi yuktatam yuktatma mam evanuttamam gatim. Synonyms. Udara, magnanimous, sarve, all, eva, certainly, ete, these, jnani, one who is in knowledge, two, but, atma, eva, just like myself, me, mine, matam, opinion, astita, situated, sa, he, certainly, yukta atma, engaged in devotional service, mam, unto me, eva, certainly, anuttamam, the highest goal, gatim, destination. Translation. All these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, but he who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider verily to dwell in me. Being engaged in my transcendental service, he attains me. Purport. It is not that other devotees who are less complete in knowledge are not dear to the Lord. The Lord says that all are magnanimous because anyone who comes to the Lord for any purpose is called a Mahatma, or great soul. The devotees who want some benefit out of devotional service are accepted by the Lord because there is an exchange of affection. Out of affection, they ask the Lord for some material benefit, and when they get it, they become so satisfied that they also advance in devotional service. But the devotee in full knowledge is considered to be very dear to the Lord because his only purpose is to serve the Supreme Lord with love and devotion. Such a devotee cannot live a second without contacting or serving the Supreme Lord. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is very fond of his devotee and cannot be separated from him. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 9.4.57, the Lord says,
I'll go ahead with that. But this reminds me of, the Lord is so kind. I mean, it's recommended that there's one way to worship the Lord. It says, Patram Pushvam Phalam Tayam me Bhakti Prachati. If you offer me a leaf, a flower, a fruit, water, I'll accept it. And just the fact that he accepts something from a devotee is amazing, and if you offer something that's insignificant as a little water or tulsi leaf, Krishna will give his very self to you. And that was the impetus that Advaitacharya, who was actually an incarnation of Mahavishnu, he saw the suffering of conditioned souls, and he started offering tulsi leaves and water because he heard that Krishna will give himself to a devotee. He wanted Krishna to come down and save all these conditioned souls. So he offered tulsi leaves and water to Krishna. He sat there, cried out, and Lord Chaitanya came himself because of his pleas. He came from the spiritual world and incarnated in this world because of Advaitacharya. I mean, there's all sorts of other reasons, but that was one of the reasons. Actually, go ahead and read that. There's only a little bit left.
Sure. Aham bhakta paradino hivasvatantra ivadvija sadhubir grastra hridayo bhaktair bhaktajana priya. The devotees are always in my heart, and I am always in the heart of the devotees. The devotee does not know anything beyond me, and I also cannot forget the devotee. There is a very intimate relationship between me and the pure devotees. Pure devotees in full knowledge are never out of spiritual touch, and therefore they are very dear to me.
Text 19. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanamam prabhadyate vasudeva sarameti sa mahatma sudolabha. Synonyms: Bahunam, many, janmanam, births, ante, after, jnanamam, he possessing knowledge, mam, unto me, prapatyate, surrenders, Vasudeva, the cause of all causes, sarvam, all, iti, thus, such, Mahatma, great soul, the sudurlabha, very rare. Translation: after many births and deaths, he was actually in knowledge, surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Purport: the living entity, while executing devotional service or transcendental rituals, after many, many births, may actually become situated in transcendental pure knowledge that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate goal of spiritual realization. In the beginning of spiritual realization, while one is trying to give up one's attachment to materialism, there are some leaning toward impersonalism. But when one is further advanced, he can understand that there are activities in the spiritual life and that these activities constitute devotional service. Realizing this, he becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and surrenders to him. At such a time, one can understand that Lord Sri Krishna's mercy is everything, that he is the cause of all causes, and that this material manifestation is not independent from him. He realizes the material world to be a perverted reflection of spiritual variegatedness, and realizes that in everything there is a relationship with the Supreme Lord Krishna. Thus, he thinks of everything in relation to Vasudeva or Sri Krishna. Such a universal vision of Vasudeva precipitates one's full surrender to the Supreme Lord Krishna as the highest goal. Such surrendered great souls are very rare. This verse is very nicely explained in the third chapter of the Śikṣāṣtaka Upanishad. In this body, there are powers of speaking, of eating, of hearing, of mental activities, etc. But these are not important if not related to the Supreme Lord. And because Vasudeva is all pervading and everything is Vasudeva, the devotee surrenders in full knowledge. Yeah, these, forgot what I was going to say. I was thinking of something.
Yeah, I mean, it just strikes me as so beautiful that, like, whatever you're doing to try to reach Krishna, it really doesn't matter, at least initially, what or why, because he'll just reward that with, his mercy and just bring you closer and closer to him. Like in the same way that chanting the Maha Mantra, and as long as you're not deliberately trying to commit offenses, but, if one, knowingly or unknowingly chants the mantra, whether they were doing it along with a George Harrison song, like it brings one closer to Krishna, even if they're not aware exactly of what they're doing. And I mean, what beautiful mercy to just not even have the right motivation and still get reward from your action.
And it's so extreme that, like, for example, Uddhava was saying, he was glorifying Krishna. He was saying, it's just so amazing. Who would want to be with anybody else but Krishna? When the demoness Putana, who smeared poison on her breast to kill Krishna, had nefarious motives, Krishna gave her the position of motherhood. How amazing is that? Now, how much mercy can you can't even imagine that, but what I was going to say, I remember what I was going to say, when you like in the beginning, one's trying to give up one's attachment to materialism. And I can actually attest to this, because I have so many bad habits accumulated throughout our lives, and we're somewhat impersonal, toward Krishna because of those bad habits. We are engaged in satisfying our senses in one way or the other, selfish motives, and we become impersonal. That's the cause of being impersonal, and so we have to cure ourselves of that disease, because impersonal is very, very, very dangerous, and it's actually offensive to Krishna, so we have to, when you're further advanced, you can understand that there are activities in spiritual life, and these activities constitute devotional service. These are the preliminary and aspects of devotional service. There's sambandha, prayojana, abhideya, sambandha, abhideya, and prayojana. Sambandha means realizing your relationship. Abhideya means activities in that relationship, and prayojana means love of God. That's the ultimate goal. And when you are on that platform, then you're protected by Krishna. Nothing can, just like said in the last verse, you can't touch this. Like what's his name? What was the guy that said that rapper, with the big
MC Hammer,
balloon pants?
MC
Can't
Hammer.
touch us. Dun, dun.
And the Rick James.
Maya can't touch you if you're completely surrendered in person to Krishna. Krishna protects his devotee from all kinds of things. But there's going to be suffering in the material world nonetheless. It's amazing that there's so many devotees that are suffering now, especially in Ukraine. There's lots of devotees there, and even mostly maybe the women left the country, who knows, but there's a lot of devotees still there. They're forced to stay there, and even though Krishna's protecting them, it doesn't matter whatever situation they're in. They are going to go on serving Krishna, and then that way they're protected. There was one devotee who was giving class this morning. It's like, when death comes, if it comes, there's two different reactions. The one is a non-devotee reaction. It's like a mouse in the mouth of a cat. Mm-hmm. They're just terrified. It's death personified. And then there's a kitten, and it's same cat, same living entity in the mouth of the cat, and the kitten's just like totally saying, "Oh, this is my mother. I'm so comfortable," and that's the way it is. And in one devotee, I think he passed away in the very same body. I think it was one of the devotees that was offered his bones to be churned in the ocean, and he just readily gave up. And he said, and he didn't even feel the transition from the spirit from the material body to the spiritual world, because he was completely unattached to his body and completely surrendered to Krishna. So much so that he gave his bones, Where are we here?
Text.
Okay, so is it my turn?
I'm not sure.
Go ahead and read. I talk too much anyway.
Text 20. Kamais tais tayer hirtaj nanam Padayante nya devata tam niyamam astayam prakritya niyata saya. Synonyms. Kamai, by desires, tai, by those, hirta, distorted, jnana, knowledge, apadayante, surrender, anya, other, devata, demigods, tam, that, niyamam, rules, ashtaya, following, prakritya, by nature, niyata, controlled, svaya, by their own. Translation. Those whose minds are distorted by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. Purport. Those who are freed from material contamination surrender unto the Supreme Lord and engage in his devotional service. As long as the material contamination is not completely washed off, they are by nature non-devotees. But even those who have material desires and who resort to the Supreme Lord are not so much attracted by external nature. Because of approaching the right goal, they soon become free from all material lust. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is recommended that whether one is free from all material desires, or is full of material desires, or desires liberation from material contamination, or is a pure devotee and has no desire for material sense gratification, he should in all cases surrender to Vasudeva and worship him. It is said in the Bhagavatam that less intelligent people who have lost their spiritual sense take shelter of demigods for immediate fulfillment of material desires. Generally, such people do not go to the Supreme Personality of Godhead because they are in particular modes of nature, ignorance, and passion, and therefore worship various demigods. Following the rules and regulations of worship, they are satisfied. The worshippers of demigods are motivated by small desires and do not know how to reach the supreme goal. But a devotee of the Supreme Lord is not misguided, because in Vedic literature there are recommendations for worshiping different gods for different purposes. E.g., a diseased man is recommended to worship the sun. Those who are not devotees of the Lord think that for certain purposes demigods are better than the Supreme Lord. But a pure devotee knows that the Supreme Lord Krishna is the master of all. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita it is said that only the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the master, and all others are servants. Therefore, a pure devotee never goes to demigods for satisfaction of his material needs. He depends on the Supreme Lord, and the pure devotee is satisfied with whatever he gives.
Text 21. Yo yo yam tanum bhakta shradaya shitum ichiti tasya chalam shradam tameva vidvahamyaham. Synonyms. That yam which tanum, form of the demigods, bhakta, devotees, shradaya, with faith, architum, to worship, chati, desires, tasya, of that, achalam, steady, shradam, faith, tam, him, eva, certainly, or surely, vidavadami, give, aham, I. Translation, I am in everyone's heart as a super soul. As soon as one desires to worship the demigods, I make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to some particular deity. I can read the first paragraph, you read the second one. God has given independence to everyone. Therefore, if a person desires to have material enjoyment and wants very sincerely to have such facilities from the material demigods, the Supreme Lord, as super soul in everyone's heart, understands and gives facilities to such persons. As the Supreme Father of all living entities, he does not interfere with their independence, but gives all facilities so that they can fulfill their material desires. One may ask why the all-powerful God gives facilities to living entities for enjoying the material world and so lets them fall into the trap of the illusory energy. The answer is that if the Supreme Lord, or as super soul, does not give such facilities, there is no meaning to independence. Therefore, he gives everyone full independence, whatever one likes, But his ultimate instruction we find in the Bhagavad-gītā, the man should give up all other engagements and fully surrender unto him. That will make a man happy. I was just thinking of something again. These things like go through my mind like flashes, and I was thinking, I'll remember it here in just a second.
Okay. Do you want me to keep going, or?
Yeah, and actually, no, go ahead and just read the last paragraph. I'll think of it.
Both the living entity and the demigods are subordinate to the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the living entity cannot worship the demigod by his own desire, nor can the demigod bestow any benediction without the supreme will. As it is said, not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Generally, persons who are distressed in the material world go to the demigods as they are advised in the Vedic literature. A person wanting some particular thing may worship such and such a demigod. For example, a diseased person is recommended to worship the sun god. A person wanting education may worship the goddess of learning, Sarasvati, and a person wanting a beautiful wife may worship the goddess Uma, the wife of Lord Shiva. In this way, there are recommendations in the Shastras, Vedic scriptures, for different modes of worship of different demigods. And because a particular living entity wants to enjoy a particular material facility, the Lord inspires him with a strong desire to achieve that benediction from that particular demigod, and so he successfully receives the benediction. The particular mode of the devotional attitude of the living entity toward a particular type of demigod is also arranged by the Supreme Lord. The demigods cannot infuse the living entities with such an affinity, but because he is the Supreme Lord or Supersoul who is present in the heart of all living entities, Krishna gives impetus to man to worship certain demigods. The demigods are actually different parts of the universal body of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, they have no independence. In the Vedic literature, Taittiriya Upanishad, first Anuvaka, it is stated, the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Supersoul is also present within the heart of the demigod. Therefore, he arranges through the demigod to fulfill the desire of the living entity. But both the demigod and the living entity are dependent on the supreme will. They are not independent.
Yeah, I remember what I was going to say. In the previous verse, they were talking about he's talking about how if you were full of all desires, if you desire nothing, or if you want to be free from all desires, you should by all means worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so, because Krishna purifies all our desires, it doesn't matter what you worship. If it has some relation to him, just like it was talking about the different kinds of people that approach Krishna for wealth or for knowledge or whatever, and Krishna will purify that desire and make him want only Krishna. But the only problem is, some people, and they were giving different examples of this. Lord Chaitanya was talking about people who never reach Krishna. They just like rot in the material world forever. People like Vena, King Vena. I don't know if you heard about him, but he's like the really bad king. And he was actually talking about the Digvijay. He said, there's a lot of Digvijayas in the world that in the past, that never come because they're so puffed up, they're only thinking about themselves. They never even remotely, think of Krishna in any way. Even Narada Muni, he was got a little bit envious of like Kamsa and these big demons like Ravana, because they were always thinking of Krishna, and they ultimately get purified even by thinking of Krishna in enmity. If somehow or other you got to think of Krishna, doesn't matter how you do it. Like the gopis think of Krishna in somewhat of a so-called lusty way, even though it doesn't have anything to do with material lust. It's a perverted reflection. But it doesn't matter how you approach it. It's like fire. If you are, even if you're a child, if you don't know that fire is hot, you're going to get burned. Doesn't matter if you're old man, kid, doesn't matter. Krishna will react because he's so powerful that you can't not get affected. Only a person who is completely selfish is not affected by the that completely ignores because of his own selfish desires. somehow or other, you got to like interact with Krishna, and then when you take one step toward Krishna, he takes 100 steps toward you and purify you in a second. Like the Digvijaya, he became pure immediately. He gave up all his like ideas of grandeur, and he became humbler than a blade of grass. It's just amazing, the power of Lord Chaitanya's. So we have one more verse, I think, here left, and you can read. I'll read the text and translation. You read the purport.
Sure.
Satasya Shadaya Yuktas Tasya Radhanami Hati Labate Chatata Kamam Mamaiva Vihitan Hitan. Synonyms: Sa, he, Taya, with that; Shradaya, with faith; Yukta, endowed; Tasya, his; Aradhanam, worship; Ihati, seeks; Labate, attains; Cha, and Tata, from which; Kamam, desires; Maya, by me; Eva, alone; Vihitan, regulated; he, for; Tan, those. Translation: endowed with such a faith, he seeks favors for a particular demigod and obtains his desires, but in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. Go ahead.
Report. The demigods cannot award benediction to the devotees without the permission of the Supreme Lord. The living entity may forget that everything is the property of the Supreme Lord, but the demigods do not forget. So the worship of demigods and achievement of the desired results are not due to the demigods, but to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by arrangement. The less intelligent living entity does not know this, and therefore he foolishly goes to the demigods for some benefit. But the pure devotee, when in need of something, prays only to the Supreme Lord. Asking for material benefit, however, is not a sign of a pure devotee. The living entity goes to the demigods usually because he is mad to fulfill his lust. This happens when something undue is desired by the living entity, and the Lord himself does not fulfill the desire. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that one who worships the Supreme Lord and at the same time desires material enjoyment is contradictory in his desires. Devotional service of the Supreme Lord and the worship of a demigod cannot be on the same platform, because worship of a demigod is material and devotional service to the Supreme Lord is completely spiritual. For the living entity who desires to return to Godhead, material desires are impediments. A pure devotee of the Lord is therefore not awarded the material benefits desired by less intelligent living entities who prefer to worship demigods of the material world rather than engage in devotional service of the Supreme Lord.
You know, when he says, living entity may forget that everything is the property of the Supreme Lord, but the demigods do not forget, that's actually not true. Because the demigods can't always understand who Krishna is. This was also in the pastime of the Digvijaya. He said it wasn't unusual that the Digvijaya couldn't understand that he was Lord Chaitanya when he first met him, even though he was so learned. He knew everything about all the scriptures, and Goddess Saraswati was dancing on his tongue. He could spew out any amount of knowledge; it would be perfect, But the thing is that even the demigods, like Lord Brahma, he tried to test Krishna.
They captured the cowherd boys.
Yeah, he caught the cowherd boys, threw them in the cave. He said, those cowherd boys are over there, and I put him over here. And where he couldn't understand. He was completely blew his mind. And then Krishna revealed, he came back after a moment of his time, which was actually a year. I mean, it's just inconceivable, and so Lord Brahma said, people say that they know everything about Krishna. For me, I don't really want to talk about it.
When Indra was bewildered, before, when Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill.
Yeah. And actually, they different demigods were ordered, to try to find out, like Krishna appeared as a yaksha at one point. And, they, like the god of fire, Agni, he came there and, said, who are you? I'm Agni. Well, what do you do? Well, I burn everything. I can burn anything and everything. And so, so I want you to go find out what that yaksha is, who he is. He said, okay, I'll let it be done. And so he went in front of this yaksha, who is actually Krishna in the form of a yaksha. And he said, okay, Krishna said, okay, burn this. And he put like a piece of straw in front of him. And he tried as much as he could. And he couldn't burn it, and time again, all the different demigods, it's like, I'm the water, the Lord Indra, and different gods like that. They were all bewildered until finally one of the demigods, I think it was Indra, after he tried, revealed the fact that this personality is actually the Supreme Lord of all the universes. So, that's the nature of Krishna. Even the demigods can't understand. So what can we understand? How can a Digvijay understand? This is material knowledge, pretty much. He may be knowledgeable about all the scriptures, but Krishna is way more knowledgeable and will cut down your pride in 2 seconds flat. He will reveal that you're actually not knowledgeable at all. Unless you surrender to Krishna, then you'll actually be knowledgeable, because he is the source of all knowledge, and everything else is just beating around the bush. So anyway, thanks again. Have a good weekend.
You as well.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Talk to you on Monday.
Okay.